Hey everyone, I am so excited about this tutorial because I get to share with you my Lacy Diamonds triangular shawl pattern. I really like this pattern because it allows you to knit up a lacy stitch that is not that difficult, and it provides a pattern, a fabric that's really nice and lacy, and the shawl itself is a triangular shawl, so it's got it's about 56 inches at the top, so a little over 4 feet, and then it's comes down to a V, and the height of the shawl is about 3 feet. So it's a decent sized shawl. It actually wraps around really nicely, and you can accent it by using a pin. Once it's wrapped around your neck, you can kind of, attach a pin here or a brooch or something, and it looks really pretty, almost has a poncho-like look. So wanted to share this pattern and tutorial with you. I've provided the pattern, the written up pattern, in the description field below. So if you click on the little inverted triangle sign below the video, you'll see the drop down for the description field, and I've provided all the materials that you need for this, which is pretty much 2 skeins of Scarfie yarn is what I used for this particular scarf. Before I knit this one, I knit another one with the same pattern using a Karen Cakes yarn, and that also provided a similar size, and it also gave kind of a stripy look to the scarf. So the pattern I've provided is for this Scarfie yarn, which is a Lion brand yarn that I've previously used to make my brioche knit scarves, and I really like the yarn because it's almost got a hand spun feel to it, and it's a blend of about 75% acrylic and 25% wool. So it is mostly acrylic and can sometimes be a little staticky, especially if you're in a very dry place, but I really like the look of it, where it feels like it's hand spun. So it might be a little bit skinnier in some places and a little bit thicker in other places. But I used up the 2 skeins, which are each about 5.3 ounces, so 150 grams each. I pretty much used up both skeins for this scarf, and this is all I have left, which I just wound up in a little ball, so less than an ounce, I would say, is what's left. But the 2 skeins should be enough to knit up the scarf. Now, I did not do any embellishments for this scarf, but options for those would be to attach a fringe on the diagonal edges of the scarf. The other thing you could do is at the bottom end of the scarf, you could attach a few beads or some other kind of decorative crystals or something like that. You could also just make pom-poms and attach them at the bottom, and then at the two sides, and I think that those are playful as well. So you could certainly play around with that, but I just kept the scarf or the shawl really plain because I think it looks pretty. And this yarn, it's the color that I used is a cream mustard color. It's just one color, one skein. The skein has the different shades in there, going from sort of a white, off-white, to a yellow, mustardy yellow kind of color, which I really liked. So it is really not that difficult to knit. The one other thing I'm going to do with this pattern is I'm going to upload this to Ravelry, and so it will be available as a free Ravelry upload. And once I have that, I'll update the description field with the link, because what I've done with the pattern is in the YouTube description field, I've provided the written up pattern. But being that this is a lace pattern, sometimes it's nice to actually follow the charts, the lace charts. And if you're not used to lacy charts or following lace charts, I will show you that in this video. But once it's available to download as a PDF from Ravelry, you will have access to the lace charts as well. And again, as you can see, it's actually a very, very simple lace pattern, but it provides just a very nice sort of airy look to the scarf. So let's go ahead and get started. So the materials for this scarf, besides the yarn, you're going to need circular needles, and you need size 9 circular needles. It doesn't have to be bamboo, aluminum, metal, plastic, just fine. But the main thing is make sure they're at least 24 inches long, or longer is fine. If they're less than 24 inches, like 16 inches, it might get a little too tight with the number of stitches that you need. You will also need a tapestry needle to weave your ends, the tail ends in, and a tape measure to measure your work, and scissors. And I've also included a optional row counter. If you're new to knitting lace, and given that this is a repeat of, you do the first 10 rows, which is just a one-time deal, and then you repeat from rows 11 through 22, and that's your repeat that you keep repeating. If you want to kind of count those 12 rows, when you're first getting started, it helps to have a row counter, but don't have to have a row counter. You could still just keep count with just a paper and a pencil or a pen, and just, you know, mark on there if you feel like you need that count. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and use that same the same Scarfie yarn that's left over for this demonstration. So to start off, you just want to take leave about 4 to 6 inches or so, and just make a simple slip knot, and slide that onto the circular needle, and that actually acts as the first stitch. And before I begin, I just wanted to say the level of this pattern, I would put this pattern at an advanced beginner level, because it does have some of those techniques like knit two together and slipping stitches and knitting to, you know, slip, knit, pass the slip stitch over type stitches. And in the description field, I have provided videos for my slower demonstrations of those specific techniques, in case you feel like I'm going a little bit faster here just for the sake of time. If you need a refresher on those techniques or want to watch a slow demonstration, I've got separate videos for those. So I'm going to keep the pattern by the side here so I can follow along. And this is your first stitch. So the very first row, all you're doing is you're going to make 3 stitches out of this one stitch. So you're going to insert as if to knit, and you're going to knit the first stitch, but don't drop the stitch off. Then take your right needle, reinsert it through the back loop of that same stitch, and knit. And we're not done yet. You reinsert it again through the front loop of that same stitch, and knit. And now you have 3 stitches from the one stitch, and that's when you drop the left stitch. So that's the very first row. Then you turn your work, and the second row and every even row in this whole pattern is going to be just a purl all the way across. So that's a great thing, I think, about this pattern, because at least every other row you can just, you know, relax, not have to focus so much on the pattern, and just purl your way all the way through. Okay, so that was row 2. Now, yeah, row 2. Okay, row 3, you knit 1. You do a yarn over, which means you just bring the yarn to the front like that, and you knit 1. You do a yarn over, and then you knit 1. And so with each of these odd rows, you're going to be increasing your work by 2 stitches. So we went from 1 stitch at the start to 3 to 5. Okay, so that's another way for you to check as your work begins to progress, and your the piece gets bigger and bigger, the number of stitches increase. You can, if you're not quite sure at the end of a row and you just want to do a quick check, make sure when you count your stitches, they should always be an odd number in this pattern. All right, so that completes row 4. And now we'll do row 5. Row 5 is just a knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, knit 2, knit 3, yarn over, and knit 1. Okay, take it over, and this might feel a little unwieldy at the start with the circular needles, kind of the loop of the circular needles getting in your way. And you're welcome to just use regular size 9 knitting needles for this initial part until your work gets big enough to where you will need to transfer them to a circular needle, and you certainly have that option. All right, row 7. Row 7, as the pattern tells you, is a knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and now it's an SK2P. And what that is slip 1, knit 2 together, and then you pass the slip stitch over. So you slip 1, I'm going to insert as if to knit, so you want to slip it knitwise, and then you knit the next 2 stitches together, and then you insert your left needle through that stitch and pass the slip stitch over. And again, I've provided a link to a slower demonstration of this SK2P. Oh, then I do a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, and purl all the way across, and that is row 8. Okay, and then row 9 is a knit 1, yarn over, and now you do an SKP. What that means is slip 1, knit 1, and then pass the slip stitch over. So we slip 1, insert as if to knit, and just bring it over, knit 1, and pass the slip stitch over. Now if you're used to doing this SKP and SK2P where you slip the stitch purlwise, where you insert as if to purl and then just pull the stitch over, that's, I think, okay too. It really doesn't matter. I don't think it makes a big difference to how the pattern looks or the diamonds look. So if you're used to doing it that way, feel free to just do it that way. Then, okay, so SKP, yarn over, then knit 3, yarn over, knit 2 together. So insert through the front loops of both stitches, knit, drop both stitches off, then yarn over and knit 1. And that's row 9, and you see that the work starts increasing, the triangle starts getting bigger. And then on the flip side, it's just all purl. So these first 10 rows are just the initial setup. You're not going to be repeating these 10 rows again. But the stitches that you'll be doing in rows 11 through 22 are all pretty much going to be the same. So I'm not in this, for the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of those stitches, but I'll just go over a few of them to give you an idea, because I don't think there's anything else that's new in those stitches than what you've seen here. So before I do that though, I just wanted to show you the chart and kind of point out, if you were following the chart for these first 10 rows, you can see that the bottom of the chart, this is where we begin, and you'll notice that the chart actually has symbols for all the different stitches, and then below there's a legend that tells you what those symbols mean. So if it's a blank cell, that means it's a knit. If it's a cell with a little dash or hyphen in it, that's a purl. A cell with a little round in it, that's telling you to do a yarn over. This little caret or inverted V is a SK2P, and then this little backward slash is SKP, and the forward slash is K2 together. So once you have the legend and you have the chart, you can see how it's just easy to follow the chart as opposed to maybe following a written pattern, especially when you have so many different yarn overs and things like that. So for me, when I'm knitting lace, it helps to have actually a pattern chart, and I like to follow the pattern chart. But it's your personal preference, whichever whichever you like, you can follow those. The only thing is, in the YouTube description, unfortunately, I can't quite put these pattern charts in there. So this is why I'm going to try and send this as a Ravelry download with the video link in there. So hopefully, once it's uploaded, I will add that link. Okay, so now we're going to get started from rows 11 through 22. And I just wanted to explain that in the pattern, for row 11, we're going to do a knit 1, yarn over, knit the next 3 stitches. And anytime you see these parentheses with or these brackets with the stitches in there with the star in front of it, that just means that we're going to repeat these stitches. Now for this first set of 12 rows that you're doing, you're really only going to need to do those bracketed stitches just the one time. But as your work keeps getting bigger and bigger, you're going to be repeating those stitches over and over until you reach either the last stitch or the last 2 stitches, last 3 stitches, etc. Okay, so let's look at row 11. So row 11, you're going to do a knit 1, bring the yarn over, knit 3, yarn over, and SK2P. So slip, knit 2 stitches together, and pass the slip stitch over, then a yarn over. Did I do that right? Sorry, took my eye away from the pattern. Knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, 2, 3, then a yarn over, then a slip knit 2, pass 2. Okay, we're right. Then a yarn over, and then knit 1, 2, 3. And the pattern will tell you to do this until you get to the last stitch, which in this case, since we're at the very start, I only have to do this repeat one time. And then when I get to the last stitch, I'm going to do a yarn over and a knit 1. And then on the back side, I'm going to do a purl. And the rest of the pattern, you're just going to follow the same way. So you'll do, again, all even rows from this point on will just be a purl. Okay, and then row 13, row 15, row 17, row 19, row 21, you'll just follow the pattern, and you'll see that there's initial part of stitches that you do, then you do those stitches in the parentheses until you get to the last stitches, and then you follow that. So all of the stitches in here I should have covered in this first part, and if you need refreshers, again, look at my video links to those slow demonstrations. And once you've done rows 11 through 22, you'll pretty much be repeating rows 11 through 22, and you can repeat that until your work measures the desired length, which in this case, at least the size that I knit up, it's about 56 inches wide at the top, and then as it shapes down to the bottom, if you take a measure of the height, it's about 3 feet, about 36 inches. And after you're done, you're going to end your work on row 21, and then that last row 22, which would have been just a purl all the way across, you'll actually cast off on that row. Now you do have the option of just completing that row in purl and then just doing a regular cast off with a knitted cast off. But if you want to follow the pattern and do the purl cast off and you're unfamiliar with that, let me show you how that's done. So you just insert your needle and purl the first stitch, and then you purl the second stitch, and you take that first stitch and you pass it over. Okay, purl the next stitch, take the previous stitch and pass it over. And that's all you're doing in a purl cast off. I found when I did the gray scarf that I showed you, or the gray shawl that I showed you, I did a regular knitted cast off. I ended with row 22, and then I just cast off on the next edge. And then for this scarf, or for this shawl, I keep saying scarf, sorry, shawl, I decided to actually cast off on this row. And the reason was I thought that it felt like to me that the curl at the top, the fabric will curl a little bit at the top. I found that curl to be a little bit less when I did it this way, where I cast off with the purl edge rather than casting off the knit edge. But it doesn't matter, whichever way you decide to do it. It will curl a little bit, and you can actually fix that or manage to flatten that out by blocking your work. Now, if you use this Scarfie yarn, this exact same yarn, which is a blend of acrylic and wool, because of the high percentage of acrylic in there, you want to be careful when you're blocking your work. So at the end of this, you're just gonna snip your yarn and don't want to slip my circular needle, and just pull the yarn through, and your shawl is done. In this case, I have a very tiny shawl for a very tiny doll, maybe. But anyway, so here's your shawl. Now to block this, what you can do is, and this is how I usually block things. I don't have a blocking board, so I just sort of pin it to either, depending on the piece, if it's a very big piece, I'll use a cotton blanket and I'll flatten it on the ground, and then I'll put my piece on it, and I use little sewing pins, which I don't have with me right now, but if you have, looking in my box here, but I don't have any sewing pins, but I've got a needle here, so I'll demonstrate it with this needle. But if you've got sewing pins, just be very careful because they are prickly. You're just gonna pin your work to the blanket or the if you're using an ironing board, you can do this on an ironing board as well. Or if you have a blocking board with blocking pins, then those are perfect. But essentially just pin it. You don't want to stretch it too much. Just pin it all the way over. And then I use an iron with the steam setting, and I hold the iron about an inch away from the piece and allow the steam to kind of settle down on it, and maybe take it away and, you know, flatten it out a little bit. And once you do that, again, do not touch the iron to this because this is acrylic and it will burn. And so just by doing that, it will flatten out. And this piece here that I'm showing you, I actually just blocked this afternoon. And really, you only need to block the upper part and the lower part. I mean, you're welcome to block the whole scarf, but or the whole shawl, but you only really need to do the upper part to stop it from curling. And as you can see, it flattens out very nicely. One other point I'll make about this yarn, the Scarfie yarn, is yes, it does tend to split a little bit. So if you don't like this particular yarn, you can certainly use a different yarn of your choice. I don't think gauge is greatly important in this pattern, but I think if you do want to get to these measurements that I have for this project, then the gauge, I've provided the gauge in my pattern as well. It is a fairly thick yarn, worsted weight type yarn. So if you do 4 stitches and just do 5 rows in the US size 9 needles, then you will get a square inch in size. And so if your work measures approximately that in the gauge, in the little swatch that you knit up with your yarn, if you use a different yarn, then I think you should be fine to follow the rest of the pattern. If your piece measures bigger, then you might want to go a needle size smaller and maybe go with a size 8 or a size 7 needle. If your square measures smaller than 1 inch, when you do these stitches and just try to make a small little square, then you want to go a needle size higher, maybe a size 10 or a size 11, and try that and see. So you're certainly welcome to use any yarn of your choice. I think the pattern will look pretty even with just a solid color if you decided to use a solid color for this shawl. And again, I apologize. I think I must have said scarf more than I said shawl. So I can put a penny in a jar each time I do that, and I would be rich. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Please leave me a comment if you have any questions, or if you liked the tutorial, please hit the like button. And if you want to see more of my videos, please subscribe to my channel, Knittycat's Knits. As always, thanks for watching and best wishes.